the single biggest paradigm shift that comes out of that in my mind is the movement from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. The model of the unipolar world being United States centric, in my mind, has been changing.
All right, we're back. Big Tones Church Truth podcast with me, the chosen son, Big Tones, episode 3. We've made it. This is an international version now. I'm no longer in Australia, but I've dedicated the time to the church. Dad, how are you doing?
Dedicated the time of the church. I'm very, very impressed. Mexico City, right?
True. I'm in Mexico City at the moment. Got fans on, airflow through the windows, trying to not have my laptop overheat, and enjoying life.
How was the flight?
Flight was good. It was empty, so I got to lay flat. I
haven't spoken to you about that. Yeah.
No. I had you would call it premium economy, where you just managed to lay down. So it was good. But yeah, so since I've been here, it's been quite the change to my perspective. You might say that it's been a paradigm shift in a way.
Well, I think it has. But you've made the choice, excuse me, to make that paradigm shift, haven't you?
I have indeed. But so obviously that little setup might have been very obvious. The subject of today's podcast is going to be paradigm shifts. So to kick us off, Dad, what is a paradigm shift?
I think it would be helpful to put up that quote from Heraclitus. I think it is. And then the second one from John Maynard Keynes. Mate, is the screen supposed to be split? Because it's not split here.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
It'll be good. There you go.
The only thing that is constant is change. Heraclitus. The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old ones. I really find those two are quite relevant to life, to society, to everything that's been going on and what's going on right around us now, what's going to be going on for the future. So I am interested to look at paradigms. You want to put up the definition of paradigm there? A framework, model, or pattern used to formulate generalizations and theories based in shared assumptions, concepts, methods, practices, and values that structure inquiry. A widely accepted view.
It's a very punchy sentence, that one.
It covers what you sort of, when I looked at that, excuse me, it covers a hell of a lot, but it's true. That's how things happen during so many different aspects of life, of technology, of geopolitics, of everything. And it's not until something happens, which is the next thing. Paradigm shift involves a complete transformation in the underlying assumptions, theories, and methodologies that guide a field of knowledge, work, and behaviors. Paradigm shifts change existing frameworks and establish new ways of thinking and approaching problems. They often lead to significant breakthroughs, advancements, and disruptions in their field. So why do I want to discuss this? It's because things are happening around us and have happened around us all the time that happen gradually, and we don't know what's happening, but they do affect us. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, we are being affected by this. And that's where we need to start looking at historical call them paradigm shifts, and to understand historically the effect that has happened on all of this is as it relates to people, as society.
Yeah.
It's the effect on us, on human beings, on human behavior, on everything. So every single thing that we talk about is the effect is upon humanity.
It's kind of like
isolation.
It's kind of like the lens that we view the world through, right? So, paradigm shifts of, I think you're going to touch on it. We can share the slide in a second, but the the shift from, was it heliocentric? Sorry, which one? Geocentric to heliocentric. So like
The very perfect example. Yes, it's from geocentric to heliocentric.
and clarify that for those of us who haven't gone through the details. I know what it is, but it's helpful.
Well, geocentric to heliocentric, the belief system was that the whole world or the whole universe or whatever was around us revolved around us, Earth.
Like Earth, right? So kind of like the USA is today.
Oh, we're going to get into that. Yes. Oh, I love that. That's a very good lead in.
Yeah, the US centric view.
Oh well, hang on. Don't. I'm not going to.
Okay.
Disclose what's coming.
Not soon.
No, so I went from that to heliocentric, which was the understand that we are not the center of everything. That was Copernicus, who just said, no, the sun goes around, we go around the sun, there's planetary systems and all of that. So that was a major, particularly as it related to religion in the Christianity world anyway.
In what way?
So yeah, so that's probably that in combined with the understanding that the Earth isn't flat, despite what some people think today, in my view.
Some have clung on to that one.
It's an area, if you want to call it, conspiracy theories, which I've looked at, but I can't get there. But it was in past times, it was the flat Earth to the movement to the spherical Earth. So if you want to look at two very historical paradigms that existed, and then there's the paradigm shift, and that shift, as we'll find out on a lot of things that we're going to go through, most paradigm shifts don't occur like that. It's something happens, but then it gradually comes into we'll call it into being, and then it just flips to say, oh yeah, that's what it is, right? And then the world changes. Changes, yes. Everything changes.
Because at first, like say for instance, the sun rotates around the Earth, or the Earth rotates around the sun. I mean, it's important, but for the average person, it's still kind of abstract. But the Earth being flat versus the Earth being spherical, that's a pretty mind-bending change for like if you believed that the Earth was flat for a long, long time, and then suddenly they say, actually, it's a sphere. You can imagine that at the time, people were probably going to resist that because it just challenges their entire view of like existence and how do people not fall off the edge and blah, blah, blah.
Well, exactly right. Yeah. Look, I see a ship leave the port. Is it going to fall over the edge? Where does it finish and where does it stop?
So it comes with a lot of necessary change. I think the point I'm trying to make is part of these paradigm shifts is like, it's not just okay, that's interesting. It's typically, it turns the core view on the other side, or it fundamentally changes the dynamic of how something works. And I think that's why we're looking to talk about it today, because often those paradigms have massive changes.
Absolutely. As we're going to go through, what I want to talk about is some historic, those ones, but there are some other ones that I want to talk about, where I still keep coming back to the concept that paradigm shifts is about the changes in human behavior in society and our structure and the way we relate to ourselves, to other people, and how we learn. How it changes our education system. So many different things come from this, if you want to call it paradigm shift, these events. We'll call them events, paradigm shift events. But it all keeps coming back to changes us and how we function in the world. But there are also we'll talk about later about personal paradigm shifts. So, but this is also part of continuing the theme. I think you just touched on it, of us understanding how our mind works as well, and where our worldview, and there are things that are happening around us where there are paradigm shifts occurring right now. And you need to me, that's the way I am. I like to understand what is moving the world around, what is changing our society around, and to sort of look at it. And we all live our lives every single day, is going through our lives, but I find it fascinating anyway.
Yeah, maybe
That's me.
maybe it's a good time to just share some of more historic examples, because that will make it a little bit clearer as to what we're talking about when we can see how that actually happened. So I might just quickly share the screen and just have a look at it, because a lot of these things have had a significant impact. Which one do you think has had, I mean, it's hard to say the biggest impact.
Well, it's interesting when you say that, because which is the biggest one? Because I was thinking, I think as we just talk now, people can look through that list, and I was thinking, I could go through each one of them, and then later on, so we could spend a couple of hours on all of going through every single one. Each and every one of those is very, very important, but the ones that sort of stand out to me are, and I might come back and talk on a few of them, is the Industrial Revolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, the equality of women. Gutenberg press to me is probably the biggest there.
Yeah, I think that's massive.
I think the two main ones is the Industrial Revolution and the Gutenberg press. So let me just focus on the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution was where did I? Oh, I did want to talk about that, but no, I forget that. No, the Industrial Revolution was it started in England. Sorry, I just had some notes on that. Sorry, buddy.
Do you know how to talk about it though? Like the Industrial Revolution was.
I got it. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, no, well, sorry. I just want to always make sure I get the right dates right. It's okay. No, the mid 18th century to the early 19th century. Started in England, surrounding the steam. We'll call it the steam engine. There are others before that, but the steam engine moving into instead of agrarian culture to an industrial culture. So businesses were able to manufacture things at a lot cheaper rate. And people moved from an agricultural rural area into the cities where the big businesses were manufacturing goods, etc. And so that then flowed into transportation, into rail, steamships. So transportation allowed people to move. And when we've got people moving, you've got knowledge moving as well. You've got goods moving. You've got an understanding of different cultures at a deeper, different level. It was actually the genesis of capitalism as well.
In
Businesses
what
way? Instead of having a whole heap of smaller rural communities and artisans or little trades, you had a conglomeration of, there's a big plant going to be built there. There's coal. We've got to go and mine coal. There's a steam, put railways down. We're going to have a business. So people would get money, and the businessmen, the entrepreneurs would set up a plant, which then allowed them to employ people. So you'd have, there was the start of the beginning of unions and everything. I know there was child labor and everything, but it was the beginning of the understanding that there are people who are prepared to risk money to build plants, to do things. So and there were laws of England came in to allow that as well. The other one was that it incentivized technological change. Competition came in and said, okay, we'll do that, but then there's a steam engine, but can we get a better steam engine? Can we get a better production facility, etc.? So things moved along pretty quickly. So I would say Industrial Revolution And then it led to the car in America, all sorts of things. So yeah,
So,
I found that, and its impact on society was vast, absolutely vast.
so just to walk through it. So prior to this, we're talking about a agriculturally led society of
Yep,
more or less different geographical areas who were self-sufficient and sustainable by agriculture in their own area. They probably had some artisans or people who, like a blacksmith, or all of the needs they had, but they were handled more on a local level, right? So
correct.
go to the neighborhood furniture maker or
Tailor, or
carpenter,
the tailor,
right? So
making clothes.
it's
Yeah,
craftsmen and individuals, as well as
correct.
farmers within smaller communities. Industrial revolution comes along and is driven mostly by machinery, right?
Correct.
The technological advance of machinery and the combustion engine, and I'm assuming combustion engine, that has enabled greater efficiencies in all of those different services that bring society together, like starting probably mostly with, I don't know, food. Was the shift first in farming, or where were the first shifts of the industrial revolution? Probably war, to be honest. That's usually the first one.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't war. It was um, no, it was actually the establishment of plants, manufacturing plants. But then that prompted the need to get it was surrounded by coal to then to heat the water to get the steam going to manufacture the plant. So we need to get the coal from the site to the plant. So there's a need for transportation, and then okay, well, we'll now be able to connect through rail all these different places to move goods and everything and people and everything from there to there to there. And then of course, yeah.
Sorry, so they were manufacturing like infrastructure, or what? Like what were the manufacturing plants?
Oh, they were manufacturing goods, yeah, as you said, textiles to furniture, everyday goods
okay.
for the family. Yeah.
So what we essentially see, just to bring it back to the paradigm, is that we're going from a very localized, smaller scale method of production that people have been very used to, and yes, there's the neighborhood, but the community blacksmith or textile, whatever. Industrial revolution comes along and it's replaced at scale with much larger corporations and more money. And then because of that, they need to, in order to distribute those goods beyond the small area, they have to develop the infrastructure and transportation to move that. Yes. And then as a result, you end up connecting all of these smaller communities, which has a whole other second order effect.
Yes, it's just not communities within, say, Britain who allowed all these technologies, the coal, the steam engine, and what have you, and the establishment of railways moved into France and into the rest of Europe, into Russia, but also predominantly the big effect was into the United States, and where they just just took it on because they had a better, we'll call it a better banking system to allow financing of the expansion of that technology and the railways and the steel making, and the steel making, railways, and the need and the expansion, and it led to the the telegraph and to the internal combustion engine, which then prompted the need for more oil to planes. So that the foundation from the Industrial Revolution in Britain led to a massive paradigm shift in the way in the way in which people conducted their daily activities, the way in which they earned a living. And they moved. They were able to earn more money going into the big cities than staying on the agrarian thing. Yes, there was a lot of child labour, a lot of abuse of that, but they were still earning a lot more money, more stable money. And it took a while to clean out the cities because it was like, if you can imagine, all the there were no pollution controls with the coal and all of that. But no, I find that But in that list that you had there, that's probably the biggest one. But it also led into, as I said earlier, a technological change. There's competition. It's another thing that's happened.
Well,
So,
I think
yeah.
what's interesting about that is, I mean, there's a lot of different parts of it, but
It sure
one
is. I mean, I'm
one
only touching on,
yeah, like
headlines.
one key, we almost say second order effect is, and for me, it's probably the more profound. It's the increased connection and exposure to broader parts of the world. Globalization, you could call it without, that's term means something else as well. But, and I think that because I've had these conversations recently as well, like the internet has done a similar thing in terms of increasing connectivity with the world and access. So, for instance, in the past, people used to, like when I was like in my early teens, or early teens, late teens, playing music, had a band. It was like very much about, okay, maybe you can make something happen in your city and town, because the exposure is, you're not going to get much beyond that, but it's more of a localized thing. Now, because access to anything across the globe is so easy from an information perspective, you're actually competing with people globally and you're having access to things globally. And for instance, what I do for work as well, it's like, I mean, I'm in Mexico City now working for clients in the US, was in Perth. Like, it's easy now to engage with and work with and access people on the other side of the world. And that was a change of paradigm through the technology medium that enables that. So I think it's like a more contemporary example of what might have been
Absolutely.
ushered in
But
back then.
but do you know how many times you use the word people then? And connection between people and the
Yeah,
change of what happens. And that's what I'm saying. It's all about, what is the flow on effect to humanity from these things? And that is these things being that which is happening around us, that's which happened through the industry. Yes, okay, well, someone came up with the idea to, how can you generate power by burning coal and heating water and generating steam? That simple thing moved the connectivity of people within their own community, to their own country, to around the world. That simple invention.
yeah. Well, there's
And
another
you think
thing.
about the impact upon society from that single thing called, how do I generate power from heating coal, water, steam? And but it's all about, so that little thing, it still comes down, and when we talk about everything else, since mid 20th century to now, every single thing of them, which we'll talk about, is about what is the effect of that paradigm shift on people, on
Yeah, well,
society.
it's not a paradigm if there isn't people, because
No, exactly. No,
like
yeah, well, no,
because
there
a,
isn't.
a
No.
paradigm is a way that you're seeing it, right? So if you take people out of the equation, there's probably no one
Yeah,
actually creating the shift in the
no,
first place. There's
no,
no one there to perceive it. One
exactly
thing,
right.
one thing I wanted to touch on there, which is very relevant for me right now, but I noticed it last year when I went to Spain and was in Colombia, compared to travel a long time ago. Again, the internet and the technology, and so number one, technology of eSIM. So an eSIM basically means within your normal mobile phone, you can just activate a temporary SIM card for the local country. So it's quite accessible in cost and you have data. So what it means is
Yep.
essentially you have your phone and you can use it as normal when you're out. So implication of that is a few things. Number one, well, you just look at maps. Like you can look at your Google Maps to get around. You can look at reviews. You don't have to ask people. Like back in the day, travel, you'd have to ask someone, where should I go? Or do you have recommendations? And things like that. Another key part about it is payment. Literally everything's on card. So obviously you want to buy something from a street vendor, not so much, but for the most part, you're paying exactly the same way. It takes money from your account. There's also these multi-currency bank platforms, which I have a card. So the ease of commerce for an individual when traveling, and also the getting around and connecting, and say translate on the phone.
Exactly.
International travel has become so much more fluid, like in that actual experience. It's not as it's not like you're being dropped in a completely foreign world and having to wander around and try and find the local currency, of which there might be, every neighboring country has its own currency and its own language. The globalization driven by the technology has made that more easy, simply put.
Well, I experienced all the precursor to all of that when I travelled into England and into Europe. There was no single currency in the EU then, so we went through, I don't know, 10 different countries in our combi van, and you had to sort of like change money, and you're losing money all the time. And then when it came to trying to speak another language, with them, Jono and I were in the back of somewhere in France. We got lost. And we're trying to talk to someone, a farmer, about how do we get out of here? And we're talking French, we're talking English. We had no idea.
Yeah, good luck.
Today you can just good luck. Yeah, so we just drove around and anyway, yeah.
Yeah, today you can literally talk into your phone, and then it will just translate it. I mean, or you could learn the language, but again, that's
what are you learning over there?
Well, I'm learning. I start my Spanish course on Monday, actually. So because and maybe leading into that, I know a bit over the place, but in terms of paradigm shifts, so I just moved. I know, like, I'm telling Dad, but Dad knows, obviously. But yeah,
I think it's important. I think it's important. We're going to touch on it a bit later.
Yeah, because this essentially is a paradigm shift for me. So my business, I have a business with a business partner. It's entirely remote, so I can work anywhere, and there's nothing really tying me to Australia. So I decided, screw it, I'm going to sell my stuff and do a year away and see what happens, go through Latin America. So I arrived like a week ago in Mexico City. And the reason I bring it up is because it is relevant in terms of your personal paradigm of, I was 4 years in Perth, so I'm used to like my friends there and my routine and going to work and the language, like, you're comfortable. And then you take that and go bloop, and you drop yourself somewhere else where you don't know the language. I know a little bit of Spanish, but it's difficult to communicate. So that becomes a new thing. Like, okay, it's going to be hard to actually communicate with people, right? Then there's just from a work perspective, yes, I can work anywhere, but like, you're having to put your new routine in place. And what is this? How do things work here? Like, that first experience of going somewhere new, you're a bit like, well, I don't have my bearings yet. But so the reason I bring it up is like, that is a shift in my own paradigm of like, I don't have all the comforts that I had before. So now it's like, okay, let's adjust to the new dynamic. And I guess it's the same principle that happens in all these other ones, just on a different scale. It's change happens, and how do we adapt to that change?
Absolutely. And the word there is change. Change can happen at an individual level by happenstance. That is the sliding doors moment, where you can meet someone or go down that path. You make a choice to go down that path rather than that path. There's decisions that you make, that there's a choice, there's something that comes up and you say, no, I'm going to choose that rather than that. Sliding door moments are not choice. It just happens, right? You go that way or that way. You're not even thinking about it. But then there are the moments of choice where you say, no, I'm confronted with a choice to choose that one or that one or that one, and I'll choose that one, right? Then there are events that happen to you completely out of your control. And each one I'm talking about here will end up with some form of paradigm shift. So there are things that happen to you completely out of your control. And I know we're moving forward a little bit, but completely out of your control. But then there are things that exactly what you've done is that you've chosen to create your own paradigm shift in your own life. And a lot of us what's the word? They don't. A lot of us have a moment where I don't want to move out of my comfort zone,
Mm.
and that's a big thing, because the effect of moving out of my comfort zone, I can't deal with that paradigm shift in my world, and the way I look at the world, the way I react to the world, the way I behave in the world. So, yeah, so I find what you've done is very, very impressive, and I admire you for doing it, because it's a difficult thing to do, you
No,
know.
thank you. I think what you said there was interesting, that the paradigms that we have, call it like how we see the world, and this is part of the reason we're talking about this, is our beliefs are comforting. And the longer we've held them, the more comfortable they are and the more attached we are to them. So the more resistant we are when it comes to change those things, because it means that your foundations are threatened. Everything that you've kind of built on is undermined. And that's not just physically, like, okay, you lose your job, or you move cities, or you don't have friends there anymore. Like, all those things that we use to draw comfort physically, when they're changed, you have to adjust, and you got to work out how to do it. And then on the physical side first, what's interesting about that is the more often you change, or the more often you put yourself in a scenario to have to, say, change and start again, make friends, or like, get your bearings in somewhere new, the more then that becomes in your comfort zone. And that is your new paradigm. But I just want to round out quickly.
Correct.
The other part of this, though, that's physically, it's an intellectual comfort zone where we get attached to the perspectives and beliefs that we have, and they form deep roots. And the deeper the roots are, the more resistant we are to ideas that might challenge them. You can imagine when they first start saying, hey guys, the earth is round. Like, I mean, all these big shifts, especially like scientific breakthroughs or conceptual massive shifts, people aren't going, yeah, that's a good point. Let's completely uproot, thousands of years of beliefs because of it. No, they're very resistant to it. But in time, it changes.
Yeah, I think you can go back to that quote by John Maynard Keynes. It's hard to see a change. It's hard to have your whole world. And this is what comes back to what we said in our first episode about worldview. Yeah. The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old ones. And that covers us as well, us as people. And that's exactly what you were going through. But
It's
you can, yeah, it's comforting.
it is
Yeah, but you
comforting.
can also create a new habit. These call it extreme sports addicts. They keep pushing themselves all the time. They create a habit. Like there's no way I'd do half 5% of the things that these guys do at all. But they've created their own paradigm is to have an adrenaline rush all the time. That's
Yeah,
their
that's
paradigm.
that's like that's the norm. That's how they do it.
Correct.
That every day I'm
Yep.
pushing beyond the limits, and
Yep.
other people might have a different one of like, no, I like my stability and security and comfort, and it's harder
Which
to.
is fine. That's
It's totally
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I've always thought with this, like, every human being needs security and stability on one end of a spectrum, and novelty, adventure, and change, call it, on the other end. Every person within that spectrum has a certain anchor point as to maybe they skew a little bit more towards adventure, they skew a bit more towards security, but from that anchor point, they swing kind of like a pendulum. So,
Yep.
if you have too much change and too much things going on, you're just like, okay, I need to just like get my bearings and rest and settle and have some stability. But too much stability and too much security, after a while, it's like, I need some change. And everyone has their own little frame within where they sit on that continuum.
Yeah, and but part of life is sometimes you may want to change, but you can't. The circumstances don't allow you to change, although you may want to change. But then change can come at you like a buddy, a bolt out of blue, which it's happened to all of us, for good and bad. But that's, I guess, we're talking about. Well, paradigm shifts is change. That's what it is, and it's a great part of us is living a life. The good and the bad.
Bloody
It's just
boring if it didn't change at all. Like it wouldn't be much.
yeah, that's the way it is.
Nothing changed.
Huh?
If nothing changed, like why would you, why? What's the point if there's no change or no I mean, evolution fundamentally is change, and if we accept
Gradual.
it,
There's a difference between paradigm shifts and evolution. But yeah.
well, you think
But
that
just go back to go on.
no, sorry, you think that a paradigm shift is like a sudden thing, and evolution is more gradual. I
Yes,
guess,
actually, I actually did cross my mind. I thought, hang on. So I did some research on that. Yeah, and the view is that evolution is a gradual thing. Paradigm shifts change, although paradigm shifts can be gradual in getting acceptance or happening to that point. But once it happens,
yeah,
it happens. And the other thing is that there's no going back. Like, well, yeah, there's no going back. So yes, there is a difference between evolution and yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's more like once it hits the inflection point, like it's like the adoption curve of technology as well. It usually takes quite a while. It's like called the adoption curve.
Okay.
So when there's a new technology or something, usually takes a while. You have early adopters, goes like this, gradually gets there, and then at a certain point, it just goes up, and then it kind of mellows out. It's slightly different.
Yeah.
Did you want to put your paradigm shifts, some of your personal favorite paradigm shifts?
Sorry, I just did want to talk about. So just go back to those historic ones, and there's kind of two there that don't flow into my ones, but
sure.
So I think it's not on there.
What was it?
No, it's okay. No, it's in the second one, but I think the one that I really like on that is the Gutenberg press. So the Gutenberg press was invented, was the evolution of printing, but it was actually the Gutenberg in the 15th century who, who actually was able to print, we'll call it in volume. And that invention was a real prompt for Martin Luther to start his 95 what do they call them? Pamphlets. And then there was the printing of the Bible, the translation from Latin to German, and it became basically it was able to move from the elites, the reading ability, to the masses. And that generated a whole heap of changes. Yes, the Reformation movement, but then it went into the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, science. People were able to put their theories and their evidence into journals, which were then shared, and the old books of old writings of Aristotle and Plato, which were in old libraries, were then made available to the masses. I mean, obviously it didn't happen overnight, but the gradual impact of the ability to print en masse. He actually went broke and it was taken over by someone else. But and there was some printing done in Venice, which then allowed material to be printed and taken on ships away to advise the world on things. And so it was, to me, it also led to an increase in education. across the board, but it became a source of information for the masses. And it was that a platform, and I call it the platform, which led to the newspapers as a part of a mass communication. But and you've touched on it earlier, but I will always say that the internet today is the modern day Gutenberg press, because the internet is the advent of the internet is has the ability to disseminate information around the world instantaneously, and so much of that information was never available to the masses, good and bad. And so, yeah, I find the Gutenberg press is probably in that historic ones.
It's massive. It's just
the flow-on effect from it is massive as a paradigm. Remember, a paradigm shift. And it's interesting, Adrian, when I was doing the research on all these different paradigm shifts, there's so many different articles. Oh, there's the top 30, there's the top 50. Gutenberg press was not in them. So
I saying maybe it's like too common.
yeah,
like not the Gutenberg press. No, what stands out to me with that primarily, and when I say considering with the Industrial Revolution, which we spoke about before, it's about scale. Like both of those, not saying all paradigm shifts are, but both of those things have enabled the scale of distribution of something. In this case, information. So it's opened up information flow in ways that didn't exist. Not even close. It wasn't an incremental increase. It was a absolutely exponential shift in the proliferation of information, and the shift that it had was not a shift of, say, I don't know, more quality or more quantity to existing people. It was a broad shift to people who haven't had that before. And then that access to information has such an enormous impact on the evolution and development of the world. So yeah, I agree. I think it's a huge one. And then the internet, I think the interesting part with the internet is that it's actually, especially now, is that it's turned the consumers into creators. So in the first phase of the internet, it was like accessing information. And then as it's evolved, it's been about the consumers of information turning into the creators of information in a very high fidelity, significant way. But then what happens every time we have these evolutions of distribution of information, whether that's words or music or whatever, you have a much higher signal to noise ratio or noise to signal ratio. So there's so much information that there is a need for an aggregator, i.e. someone who can help you find the information you want, because there's billions of web pages. How do I find what I want? Enter Google, and say with music, Spotify, YouTube, you have, and then what happens over time is these platforms end up having the power to influence and determine what people see. It's an interesting shift of huge volumes of information available, and then a need for someone to kind of organize and structure and disseminate. And over time, agendas or interests of those aggregators take precedent. And at a certain point, then people go, screw this, this is too limited. We need to take it down and try something else. But yeah, I think it's
okay, absolutely correct on all of that. One of the effects of the Gutenberg press, and also of the internet, is the movement away of control of information, policies, viewpoints from the elite, the controllers in the day of the Gutenberg press, the Catholic Church at the time, and of the monarchies, to the masses. And so there was a questioning, an ability of the dissemination of different views as to how things were being told to us by the Catholic Church, for example. And that questioning process allowed for, then if you think about it, then moves into the the revolutions against the monarchy. It moves into the questioning of how are we being treated. So if you have a look at the internet, an element of the internet is that there has been, prior to the internet, the control mechanisms by the elite, the governments and everything, was through the we touched on it, the radio, it was the newspapers, radio, television, and that was basically it.
Yeah, mass media.
And they were mass media, and they were able to control it. The internet has opened up the flow of information to the masses to be able to start to say, well, hang on a tick, there are completely different views out there other than what you're telling me. So I'm just comparing that impact of the paradigm shift, and I've got to keep coming back, of what that Gutenberg press did in so many aspects. In this particular aspect is, hang on, of the masses and the internet saying, well, you're selling us that, but we've got different views out here. I think it's a very powerful
I think
impact.
What's interesting as well is that over time, that same control of information flow, it gradually has crept back into the internet.
No, 100%.
Yeah,
And that is going to be a topic for the future, which is, it's still the flow and effect of propaganda, of mind control, narrative, censorship, and that has crept back in to those aggregators, which you quite rightly touched on. And
and
absolutely.
I think for me, what's most interesting about that is, like, is this just an inherent cycle of the way things work? Like, is this like a human development code of, okay, explosion of information? It's like abundant information and then control, or maybe not even information. It's like explosion of different options and then a ordering and organizing and controlling of that, and then a revolution, and then an abundance, and then control. Like,
I understand you're talking trends.
Yeah, I'm talking more like a model more broadly, like even say in manufacturing, little bit of an aside, but a lot of manufacturers are moving now to what they call nearshoring. So rather than being as dependent on one major provider overseas, they're like having multiple different productions closer to home.
Yeah.
Because it's there's more flexibility with the model, less dependency. In a way, it's kind of like the same model of a centralization to a distribution to a centralization. Anyway, that was observation, maybe not relevant. You were saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but we're talking about information flow. I'll take that on notice. I'll take that one on notice.
It's just a thought.
Where were we going to go through? Oh, I think there's one on that historic. I did add one late to the party. Okay, there's oil, but there's to me the oil, or the impact of oil is incredible. But I don't want to talk about that. There's one I did put down, and I think that's electricity. I think of all the yes, I know it's there. That was in my I think electricity is the ability to generate electricity is probably, to me, the greatest. And I know I've talked about yes. Let's move into this. I know I've talked about the Gutenberg press and the internet, but I actually believe electricity is the greatest invention, because when you think about the ability to generate electricity, it's just not electricity, it's batteries. You can't start a plane without a battery. You can't. I think the best way of looking at it is, how would modern society operate without electricity? We can't.
Not at all.
We just can't. Not at all. Zero. What are we doing today? Everything that's happening here is based upon electricity. I could take the PowerPoints out and my computer would still operate because there's a battery in it. But that battery is generating electricity. Our satellites, okay? our satellites are being powered by solar panels, but all they're doing is generating, the solar panels are actually generating electricity to
Yeah,
allow it to all function.
it's pretty helpful.
It's an understatement.
Like, I mean, imagine like when you have a blackout, how much that sucks. I mean, it's like good. It's like kind of a cute little novelty for an evening, but if you really take out electricity, it'll be so shit. But well, you go camping. I guess camping is pretty much well, even not even because you still got torches and
Yeah,
depends
you still
how
got torches, a battery,
depends how hardcore you are though. Some people probably like just navigate under the moonlight.
but even a solar panel is just a solar panel. Even if you're out in the bush, you still generate. That's all that's doing is
Yeah, it's electricity.
a means to generate electricity.
Yeah. Well, it's energy, right? Ultimately, it's like we've uncovered energy and its ability to create like a
Well,
godlike power.
but go back to well, the power was the steam engine. That was to create energy, right? Oil, oil was
Mm.
to and diesel, oil, diesel to power ships, to power planes, or which goes into kerosene. Oil is an incredible product. You know, plastics, everything. I'm just saying.
When was the light
But
bulb
to me,
invented?
I this light bulb was by Edison in 18 something. I
Damn,
have
that's
got that
pretty.
here.
So I guess before that they were using like candles and kerosene burners and shit.
Gas lamps, yeah.
That
Uh,
still works.
yeah, hang on. Well, actually, the light bulb was Thomas Edison, and it was in
1879,
1882.
1882. Right.
1880, and he was involved in the creation of the first power station. So the light bulb,
That's
yeah.
not that long. Like in the scheme of things, that's like what, 150 years less. So before that, we're all walking around and now we like literally talking about AI robots that might take over the world. And then 150 years ago, people are getting about with a like kerosene rag on a stick and hoeing the fields with like just to get a turnip to have for dinner. Quite a long way.
Well, I think the impact, it starts with the Industrial Revolution. With what it is the the ability to generate energy cheaply and distribute it to the masses, be that and use that energy for that cheap, reliable, efficient energy, being the steam engine to then oil and the ability to generate electricity cheaply, reliable, efficiently, has been the single biggest, if you want to call it, I haven't even thought about that, but that as a paradigm shift for humanity is the ability to generate energy, which is then allowed for all the things that have occurred in the last 150 years and the exponential growth because of the cheap energy.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah,
Like without it,
everything.
it's like the patriarch of the paradigm shift.
I'll go with that. Good day, Daddy.
Yeah, that big sorry, and or matriarch, whatever way you want to, whatever paradigm you view it with.
Just looking at
Yeah,
time. Can we go to those current ones?
we can.
So I'm not going to go through each one of them, but
That's
I'll
good.
try to put. Huh?
That's good.
No, but and I just let people sort of scan through them into those different groupings: geopolitics, technology, society, and science. Now, um, why I've done that and put them into those different topics, and I'll talk about the topics and then where I see the paradigm shifts within each of those topics, and we've covered a lot of it already, but not this one. Geopolitics. Um, Essentially, what those events that I've listed there, the single biggest paradigm shift that comes out of that, in my mind, is the movement from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. And what I mean by that is after the Second World War, the United States effectively became, and I know Russia was there, and we moved into the Cold War, but effectively the manufacturing base that the United States had created uh, uh, to produce the war goods, I'll call it that, was incredible. And when you look at some of the abilities of to produce tanks, of planes, of all sorts of stuff during that period, set an industrial platform for the United States to have the most powerful economy and set the foundations for it moving forward. But it also allowed it to be preeminent in the way in which the world was going to operate. Um, um, and it took that position seriously, together with the power of the financial system out of Wall Street. So the money allowed money to be generated for the entrepreneurs to go and create big businesses and all of that, which flows from that. But the United States used that as a take on Russia, and it was basically capitalism versus communism. We know who won that battle. But from that moment, the United States have used its position to act as, in some view it as a leader. They don't take democracy to the world. That's their mantra, freedom, etc. But they've we're going to be the policemen of the world, and we're the top dogs, and that's what they've taken. And they've used their industrial strength, their financial strength, their military strength, and also their ability to generate incredible technology. Yes, Team America. I love it. Yes, exactly. Very well done. And very apt. And very, very apt. Yes.
One of my favorites.
But it's true.
Yeah, sorry. Just add to it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, Team America. Yeah, so that and I will use the word hegemon. And they've used that in doing so many different things, and around the world, and in influencing the United Nations, the World Bank, the IMF, and, as you know, that book that you read, Adventures of the Economic Hitman. And there was he did a second one, so touching on regime change, and we don't like that dictator. He's not doing what we tell him to do, so we'll take him out. So that the model of the unipolar world, being United States centric, in my mind, has been changing, and that's the paradigm shift that we're in right now in the geopolitical world. And a lot of that has been driven by China becoming an economic powerhouse. I will talk later about the impact of why and how China got to that through, in my mind, it was Wall Street driving it, a lot of it. But we've now the events of Ukraine, where the United States, I won't go into detail, but the world has been moving in the last 10 years to a different model, and it's called BRICS, run by China, Russia, India, and Brazil. And that BRICS took on more prominence as a consequence of the fiasco in Ukraine, where the United States basically was a driver to say, we're gonna freeze $300 billion worth of your assets, Mr. Putin. And the world just suddenly said, what the hell is going on here? What if they can do that to Russia, they could do it to us. So in the last 2 years since the fiasco in Ukraine started, the movement of countries to move into the BRICS world has been massive. I think there's another 25 countries that said we want to do that. The SWIFT system of international banking, which was run effectively out of the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, the BRICS system, they've created their own system. You've now got oil. The oil was the petrodollar, which is for the United States to be able to print all their money. or you're now getting oil that's being sold to China out of Saudi Arabia in yuan, India, all these other countries are saying. So the movement away from unipolar United States to multipolar world, and it's going to be another topic, right? Another thing is massive. It is a massive paradigm shift.
Big Toes, did you know? Give us the facts.
Only a very short one, mate. I was going to come up with another number, but I won't. This is a very short one. It's called the boiling frog syndrome.
Delicious.
Not sure. I've never tried a boiling frog. No, it's if you put a frog into cold water and you slowly bring the water to a boiling point, the frog doesn't jump out. So the analogy is so the frog is just going to let things happen around him to his detriment, or not knowing what's happening around him at all. The analogy is to things that are happening around us right now in our world, including paradigm shifts that we don't know about, which are affecting us. So that's the boiling frog syndrome. Yeah.
Right. So the did you know is that if you want to boil a frog, you should keep the water cool at first. Don't put the frog in once it's already boiling, because it'll not like pasta. You got to boil a frog differently than you cook pasta.
A bit like pasta, yeah, exactly right.
So that's what I got. That's what I got from that.
Okay, right, mate. Nothing else, right? Okay.
No. Obviously, there is much broader societal implications on that, but
which we'll touch on. Yeah. All right, buddy.
Certainly will.
What's Spanish for see you later?
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Oh, I just say ciao because it seems to be internationally easy.
All right.
All right.
See you,
that's
mate.
it.
Bye.
Episode 3. Thank you. Peace out.